Welcome to the Mission First People Always podcast. We're glad you're here. And now our host, Dr. Mike Patterson.
Think about a great team you've been on in the past. The way team meetings energized you and how easy it was to get things done. My guess is that you probably enjoyed the time you spent with your teammates and even developed some strong personal friendships along the way. On most days, you were probably pretty excited to go to work. Being part of a great team helps us thrive and grow because there's a strong element of honest feedback, and it's safe to share ideas and try new things. It's also clear that everyone cares deeply about the work and each other. It's an environment where it's easy to be at your best. The reason I'm so excited about this episode is because I'm going to have a conversation with two experts on how to create this sort of environment through authentic collaboration. And I'm glad you're here to be part of it.
Welcome to the Mission First People Always podcast, where we talk about better business results, stronger teams, more successful careers, and happier lives. Along the way, we hope to bust some biases, build some bridges, and have some fun. We're glad you're here. And now, our host, Dr. Mike Patterson.
It's Dr. Mike Patterson, your host of the Mission First People Always podcast, where we talk about what it takes to be a great leader and how to build great teams. I'm the author of the book, Mission First People Always, the definitive guide to balancing people and performance, and it's available on Amazon or wherever you buy your books online. I'm also a trainer, consultant, and coach focused on leader and team development. Let me remind you, as I always do, please subscribe or follow, leave a review, and tell a friend about our podcast. I do the podcast because I sincerely want to help people lead better and get more done with their team. It's always encouraging when I get that feedback when I'm out speaking at an event or at a conference and someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, I heard the podcast and it really helped me in this way." I couldn't get better affirmation than that. Now, I'm excited about today's episode because we're talking to two experts who claim that they've cracked the code on collaboration and driving a healthy organizational culture. Let's meet them. My guests today are Edward Van Luinen, who just happens to be a former doctoral student of mine many years ago at Pepperdine University's Graduate School of Education and Psychology. But Edward has come so far in his career that I'm excited to reconnect with him. Edward is now the CEO and board advisor of Global Talent Builders, and that's a worldwide recruiting change, DE&I, and workforce development company based in Pasadena, California. Prior to this, he was doing corporate talent and change work with some notable companies like the Walt Disney Imagineering Group, Sony Entertainment, Heineken, and Avon. Edward's collaboration motto is advance a team member when you advance yourself. And he's worked all over the world, including a stint in the Peace Corps. He's worked in Africa, Europe, and all over North America. He collaborates in English and French. We will be doing the podcast in English today, however. And I'm just excited to have the co-CEO of Authentic Collaboration with us. His colleague, his business partner, the other CEO of the business is Tricia Cerrone. Tricia brings global leadership experience, leading projects and innovating new designs, overseeing portfolios of work for Fortune 500 companies like Disney, where she and Edward worked on projects together there. She was the creative development executive on the Imagineering team at Disney. That's a big deal. She is adept at inspiring and motivating teams towards successful outcomes while advancing careers and developing new leader. She is an award-winning author and screenwriter, and again, co-CEO at Authentic Collaboration. and she comes to us from the beautiful state of Florida today.
Thank you. We're so excited to be here.
Absolutely.
Edward, you and I have some history together, some good history. You were in my class several years ago, and like most of my students, I am so proud of you and what you've accomplished. And I saw something special in you all those years ago, and now here you are, all grown up. So that's awesome. Um,
Thank
and,
you.
and
Likewise.
Tricia, it's great to meet you and have you here. I'm excited about this topic today because I've seen sort of the dark side of teams that don't work well together. And if we were going to apply the old question, does the audience want the good news first or the bad news first? Let's go with the bad news first and begin by highlighting what happens to a team when they don't collaborate well. What's the impact on the business? And maybe we create a business case for collaboration. So, what happens to a team? And you could answer this from experience or empirical data, but what happens to a team in terms of morale, commitment, and work output when there isn't good collaboration?
That's a great question, Mike. And thank you for putting why are we here right up front. And, a Salesforce survey, about maybe 4 years ago now, had 85% of respondents said that the reason there were failures on projects and things was because of poor communication and collaboration. And then that was followed up with another survey by Gusto where more than 50% of people were leaving their job because they didn't have a sense of community or even liking the people they were working with, which we all kind of know is really important. And then, interestingly, Edward just sent me an article about people not wanting to come back to work, which if they don't come back to work, collaboration changes a bit. And even with technology, putting in collaborative tools, I feel like there's a human element that can be missed. So I feel like collaboration and the lack of collaboration hits the ROI of a company really fast, just trying to achieve a project. And then because you don't have it on that emotional and teamwork basis, people don't like their job. They don't like who they're working with or for whatever reason, right? They leave and you have this revolving door, which is another hit to your bottom line. Those are just a few of the really kind of quick and obvious things. Edward, is there anything you'd want to add to that?
Yes, I love what you said because Trust Radius also did a survey on the online collaboration software market, which has been predicted in 2024 to reach $13 billion. So technology is striving to get to a collaborative space. But as you say, Tricia, it's dependent on humans and working and collaborating and working more humanly together to make that software work. So
Right.
there is a desire for everyone to be collaborative. And sometimes it shows up, Dr. Mike, as you say, but sometimes it doesn't. And that's why, we feel like our approach is unique and offers a really strong, viable alternative.
I think it's always grounded in a relationship. The technology that can support us and remote work, all of that is useful and helpful, but it comes down to people communicating and working together. And Tricia, something you said sparked an old memory for me, and it was something that I think a consultant and author, Bev Kay, named Bev Kay, said many years ago. She said, people don't quit companies, they quit bosses. And I've added onto that, they quit teams. So the turnover is a huge issue.
Yes, it is. And there is great technology and we're such great, innovative, creative people. We're trying to fill in the gaps, but I feel like you still have to have that awareness of why you should use the technology and the behaviors and the kind of the goals in mind. Otherwise, the technology is going to sit there and you're not going to use it in an appropriate way.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move beyond technology and talk about humanity here
Yes.
in our conversation. Let's get to the good news of our conversation here. We can do better, much, much better through something you call authentic collaboration. So Uh, what is authentic collaboration? And we'll begin our conversation there.
Edward?
Well, we are so excited to talk about collaboration because it's what we did at Disney and it worked. Collaboration, as we define it, is a group action toward a common goal with all hands on deck all the time. And it's grounded in our 5 core behaviors, and that makes it authentic. And many times teamwork, it becomes pretty clear when a new team forms and starts working that there's a hierarchy within that team. Who gets to do what? Who doesn't get to do the strategy? Who does the hands-on work? Who does the follow-up? In authentic collaboration, it is all hands on deck, which means that executives will clean up the conference room after a meeting, that everyone has a role, whether it's strategic or hands-on, to make our team successful. And it's grounded on the 5 behaviors: generosity, co-creation, preference for action, resourcefulness, and gratitude, which are real how behaviors and competencies, almost universally human in approach. So that's where we feel authentic collaboration, born from our work in Disney and successful there and implemented in other companies, is a differentiator in how we can be as leaders and lead teams.
And
Now,
just to kind of answer kind of what you said, Dr. Mike, about like what's the positive side of collaboration. What we have found is that when you do it right, it's awesome. Like it just changes everything. So you do have the ROI and because you are just more efficient. There's the safety and trust required to innovate and take risks. You have early trust versus we used to always say like we trust each other by the end of the project where we've been in the field together, but we really needed that trust earlier on. So you get the ROI, you get the early trust, you get development as an individual and as a team, you get the efficient problem solving and the innovation. But most of all, and this is kind of a metric that Edward made up when we were trying to assess things, is we said, what's the I love my job metric? And we really feel like when you have that collaboration, it changes the energy of the team and the energy at work. And people are showing up early and they're staying late and not because you're asking them to or taking advantage of them.
yeah,
Exactly.
I think the quantitative outcomes are important. Obviously, in business, we're looking for the impact on the bottom line and all the lines in between. But I think that qualitative component, and I love what you coined there, that expression, Edward. I love my job component or metric or measure. I think is really cool. It's experiential. It's something you feel and maybe hard for people to describe, but maybe it is summed up best in that statement. Hey, I love my job. I love getting up and going to work every day. I saw something recently, and I can't remember who said this or wrote this, or I'd certainly give that person proper attribution. But they said you can really tell a lot about your company's culture based on how people feel on Sunday night and Monday morning about the week ahead.
That
I
is
think,
I love that metric. And Dr. Mike, you mentioned relationship. Well, Tricia and I had a very strong business relationship, which is foundational to authentic collaboration in how we started. And we both cared first about the company, then about our team, and then ourselves. That in itself is sometimes we find colleagues who have that priority order, sometimes we don't. But we shared that common goal, that sort of noble, purpose. What's the bigger picture of the work we're trying to do? How does it fit in the strategy? And that really started with not only that awareness, but relationship. After our first meeting, Tricia and I, on our enterprise-wide project that went 3 years, we said, "Hey, let's grab a coffee." Most people,
I'm going to interrupt Edward because we only knew of each other a little bit. We'd have maybe one meeting together, and I certainly did not want to partner or collaborate on some new project because I already had enough work. And so we were literally called into our leader's office, and we were both sitting on the sofa, and I was probably shaking my head at my leader going, "What are you saying right now?" And like smiling, like that type of thing. So Edward made sure that we had coffee afterwards. And Edward, I'll let you continue the story from there, because sometimes your leaders put you together and you have to figure it out.
Yeah, and I'm interested in hearing about what turned the tide for you, Tricia, and what was the tipping point when you said, "Hey, I want to work with this guy."
Mm.
Tell me that part of the story.
Yeah. And part of my being hesitant is like I knew the project we were working on was his project, right? And I didn't want to then be the person coming to take over, or, you don't know people's egos or boundaries or anything, and certainly we just didn't know each other that well at that point. But when we had the coffee and Edward was kind of proactive about, well, how do you like to communicate? I'm like, okay, so he's not going to be like sending me 100 emails or whatever, calling me when I'm busy or whatever. So I'm like, okay, it was like this little sign of like, I see you and I respect you and I know you're busy. But he's also was like, what would you like to learn from this project? And I remember when he did that, and that was like at a later meeting. And I thought, that's a really interesting question that no one has ever asked me. What do I want to learn on this project? Because they're all always assuming I already know everything because I'm the leader of the project. And, if our resume isn't growing, we're sort of not really thriving at work. So it made me more consciously think about, what do I want to learn? And what can I learn from this guy? And then I was like, okay, well, he knows this, and that would be valuable to me. So we shared what we wanted to learn. And I think that was kind of like, it just made me wake up and get out of my own head of, I have to get this job done, and just pause and go, oh, there's a better way of getting this job done.
So, Edward, where did that question come from for you? It sounds like it was right on target for your colleague. What do I want to learn from this project? Is that something you've always said? Did you stumble across that because you read it somewhere? How did that become part of your vocabulary?
Great question. I actually borrowed that from a colleague who asked me that on a large scale project. I want to say 5, 10 years before working at Disney. And I thought, I love that too. And it's a head turner. It makes people pause. And as Tricia said, in a world where we all had at least a dozen projects, what's a differentiator that will get people to hope to want to work with someone when they're so busy already? And that's where, learning comes in, relationship, and that's where, Tricia and I have complementary, but also different leadership styles. Those are easily bridged if we focus on relationship and making the company and teams win, because our priorities are in order there. So, and then spending that time asking questions that many leaders, as you know, Dr. Mike, spend a lot of time working. Oh, should I call Trish? Should I email? Should I text? Well, ask, save time. What's going on? How much time do you have? And then the crowning glory is following up. Was there a meeting invite? And not just I was stuck or Trish was stuck doing the tasks every time, but no, we shared the tasks. And that's where collaboration starts. It's like, oh, I'm not going to be stuck setting up the meetings. So it's a combination, as you say, of trust, of collaboration, expertise, because we both had our areas of expertise, but also, empathy. We asked and cared about how much work was going on and really worked at that in the relationship. So that was a differentiator that we kept going throughout, the working relationship.
So you guys, I love to hear those origin stories. That's where you guys connected and started. And over the next few years, you discovered or identified some behaviors, the 5 behaviors of authentic collaboration. And I want my audience to hear about those. I also know that you have a book that's ready to get into the world at some point very soon, that's going to reveal all those. And we'll have you back on to talk about the book when it's out. But tease us a little bit. What are these 5 behaviors? What do they look like? And how does a regular person in the workplace leverage them for better collaboration?
Great question. Thank you. So Edward mentioned them earlier, and we didn't a lot of times people are doing these things, but they don't realize why they work. And so they don't do them consistently. So I would first say, like, as we tell you these 5 behaviors: generosity, resourcefulness, co-creation, preference for action, gratitude. These are things that everyone can do, right? We think of them as verbs, not nouns. You're not born with them. You learn them and you practice them. And so the thing that we were doing naturally was I think we're both natural life learners, and we don't just learn information, we practice it. And that's what everyone needs to be doing as a leader, of like, here's my goal, and I'm consistently, intentionally trying to grow and get better at this thing in different ways, right? So generosity being like for the first behavior, I'll give you an example. It's really, the ability to give without measuring or keeping track. And it's about, believe positive intent first, like give the generosity of spirit, share ideas, share credit, share encouragement and knowledge, give people the truthful, don't be afraid to acknowledge someone else's talent. And the great thing about generosity as a thing that you do as a leader is that it will combat the pride and ego that can attack a leader, because it just fights against, pridefulness and humility and the need to be all about you. So this idea of, I'm going to acknowledge someone else's talent and tell them that I saw them and they were amazing, without feeling like I'll be threatened or less because of it. And you might see a leader who does have ego, and their whole desire is to be special. And so sometimes that comes out in negative ways. And generosity is the thing that really just combats that, and I think can help people overcome it. And it also creates a space for people to feel safe to then turn to you for help, right?
And in your work, I also want the audience to know that you are consultants, you're trainers, you do coaching, you have workshops on this stuff. Can you tell me a story or give me an example about how you've seen generosity change a situation, change a relationship, impact the team positively? Give me an example of why this is so valuable.
Sure.
Want to go? Or
And we have so many examples, but I love how Trish framed it. Generosity. One thing that we did the 3 years on our global project was something called walk and coach. So after a major workshop or an event or a large meeting, walking back to our offices with our team that was a sizable team for the number of employees, we would walk and coach. Ask that team member, how did that go? Try to get something positive that they did, and something else that could be improved. It's usually maybe just a 5-minute walk back from the event to the office. Well, that's an example of generosity, because most of us think, oh, I have to have a formal 1-hour coaching meeting, performance review. I'm driving it real sort of accessible, walking and coaching and observing and sharing and letting the teammates share was a great way to support them.
So that
Another thing Tricia and I did with
let me just jump in and clarify something here, Edward. It sounds like that it was just a natural part of your operating rhythm. You didn't have to set aside extra time and say, I am going to be generous and give you feedback. It was just like part of your flow.
It was. Thank you for saying that. It was very natural, and it flowed out of the human focus Tricia and I had with our authentic collaboration team, which is, what do you want to learn? Well, that work experience was a learning event. Of course, had other goals too. But let's talk about what did people learn? What did you learn? What did I learn? And then it's very natural and organic. So we thought we're proud of that. Another example is a 24-hour feedback. So we had executives who were coaches and teachers for our initiative. And Tricia and I said, hey, let's get real specific on providing them creative written feedback within 24 hours of how they helped our global project. And they had that in their email box. Well, they were really happily surprised. We got emails and said, gosh, you were so specific and quick and thorough and kind to send me an email about how I contributed to this project. That was another we thought that was generous to other leaders, authentically generous, because it was specific and positive about how they move the project forward. Um, so those are just two examples.
Yeah, I love that. You know, the more and more I study and teach leadership, the more it often comes down to just being a good human being
Yes.
as the foundation for good leadership. So being generous, giving, offering affirmations and encouragement to colleagues, that's what a good human would do, and that's what good leaders do. So I think there's a connection between humanity, and you guys use that word a lot in your work and conversation. So I think that is so foundational. Tricia, let's give us another behavior from your list of 5 and review the 5 for us.
Yeah.
Help our listeners remember the big 5. So when your book comes out, they'll be excited to dig into that.
Yeah. So I'll give you just the quick overview. So generosity, the ability to give, right? Resourcefulness, like be able to think on your feet and pull from your knowledge base. So again, something that you want to always be working on to grow your resourcefulness. We'll talk a little more about co-creation, which is how you ask for ideas and build on ideas and test ideas. And it really is about listening and magnifying and exploring options. So it's great for problem solving and for innovating. Preference for action, which was also a great one for me to see in Edward right up front, right? So I knew I wasn't going to be the one doing all the work as like the producer lead versus the HR lead, that he took action right away, as did I. And that's important to see. And you won't learn if you don't act. So it's something to always have. It's always better to do something than just talk about doing it. And then gratitude is the last one. So it's always about saying thank you quickly, to compliment authentically and specifically. And people sometimes get generosity and gratitude confused, but I would say generosity, think about yourself, is like you are giving something to another, and gratitude is someone has done something for you and you are now responding by thanking them. So in generosity, you might, offer a development opportunity, but gratitude is when your leader gives it to you and then, you write them a nice thank you note. And a lot of leaders don't get thank you notes. So write one to your leader.
Yeah, great advice. And let's get real practical. As you know, here on the podcast, we try to give really straightforward, practical tips to people that will help them lead better right away. So you've offered up some practical tips to kick off or reinvigorate team leadership in meetings, coaching, career development tactics that you've found that work. So give us some examples here. I'd love to get 2 or 3 examples for my listeners that they can embrace and maybe start doing right away. We usually save that question till the end, but let's do it now, because I'm sure you've got a lot of good stuff for us. But what are a few things that leaders can do to make this authentic collaboration get going?
Mhm. I'll jump in. So, we talked about the development concept. Companies spend millions and millions of dollars on development, and it's great to go to a conference. I love it. But I always have learned the most when it's on the job and I'm developed on the job and learn from other people. And so I would just say one of the things that we did right up front, taking that tip of what do you want to learn in this project, is in our setup meetings, we let everyone share. And I had met with all my people one-on-one. So I also had ideas of what I wanted them to learn, but we let everyone share what they wanted to learn on this project. And then we were able to also point to other people on the team who might be able to help them. And even the most experienced people would share what they want to learn on this project in our very first meeting. And, sometimes we talk about that need for trust. And I think it's great to share something about yourself, but sometimes when it's personal, nobody cares, or they don't care because they don't know you yet. And it's not about the work. And so I would just tweak that when you ask people about stuff. This is a great way to, one, get to know the person, realize they're humble and still learning no matter how long they've been with the company. And then also it gives people a way to help another person. So it spurs that brain chemistry, which is I think our brains light up more when we help another person. So when you know what they're trying to develop in themselves and you read a book or hear a podcast or make a recommendation, you feel good about it, and you have this whole team that's now working together. And so that's something I would have every project do and share, so you all know how you're trying to grow and learn. And if you don't know the people on your team, doing that right at the beginning gives people a reason to communicate and to help each other. And so it builds early trust, and also, again, an excuse to go talk to somebody, right, that they might not know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And Tricia or Edward could respond to this thought that came to me while you were sharing that, Tricia. Is your approach uniquely suited for the current generation in the workforce? You know, I'm at the end of my career, hopefully not right away, but I'm a baby boomer. My generational cohort viewed work differently than other generational cohorts. So, is your approach really uniquely suited for any particular generational cohort? And if so, how?
Great.
Edward and I might disagree. Edward, I'll let you go first.
Oh, thanks. It's a great question. We feel that authentic collaboration is not more suited to any particular work generation, but all work generations in the workplace. And I think there's now 5 with in the workplace today. We've also tested cross-culturally that there's application to these 5 behaviors as well. But if you think about it, going back to what we've talked about, which is being human, and being a better human means I'm going to be a better leader. Who doesn't want to be the recipient of gratitude? Or doesn't want to be generous? Because if you give that, you're going to get it. And since our 5 core behaviors are human focus, what do you want to learn, develop? And instead of please just come do this task list, go do this task list and come back when it's done, a robotic approach, it's much more human. What do you want to learn while you're working? So we feel that and the younger generation, as we do know, Gen Z, millennials, they love lots of projects, lots of learning. That's where they get their excitement and learning, and they connect with. So we feel this is ideally suited to all, but particularly to those wanting to learn and maybe entering the workforce pretty recently.
So you mentioned your cross-cultural validation. Tell our listeners a little more about that. I mean, we're all striving for more diverse, equitable, and just workplaces. Do your 5 behaviors encourage engagement across the board from a diverse group of colleagues?
Yes. In essence, collaboration, if you come from a culture that is more collectivist, is a more natural way to lead. If you come from a more individualistic cultural model, these also are original and may be easier or more difficult depending on your leadership style within the individualistic culture you come from. So we've been on previous conversations and podcasts with leaders from diverse cultures that represent individual and collectivists, and they've responded positively. Some have said, yes, this is a natural description and prescription of how we lead in our collectivist culture. Or from our individualistic culture, this is a new approach. This can be day one for me, whether I'm in a high growth company, a restructure or turnaround. I'm going to try these because I'm a leader and I'm day one, I'm going to try something new. So we feel that there's a broad application in different cultural environments.
Yeah, I think there's something about, I mean, if you just look at how tribal our society has become, right? And I feel like some of the language that we use in the corporate world is not useful to us, and it feels like it's being force fed. But when you just look at, people do want to be generous. They do want to be smart and resourceful. They do want to create with others and make stuff happen and be people who have gratitude. But they lose that sometimes when they walk in the door of their office. And so I think it's just about pointing to our higher selves and helping people see, here's how I could do that at work and in my day. And I think when you naturally learn these behaviors and practice them, those barriers to, all the diversity and inclusion problem goes away, because when you're generous and you're assuming positive intent, you're not looking at people as if they're the other. When you're resourceful, you're going to other countries or you're going to restaurants and you're asking questions and you're learning about people. And that breaks down the boundaries of the mystery, because once you know someone, they're not the enemy anymore. And the language of co-creation, which is more open, of asking, well, what made you think of that? Or I wonder if we could do this. That opens a language where people can talk to each other in a safe way. So I just feel like there's so much about these behaviors that just breaks down so many issues that we've been having. And if, we've kind of said we're so passionate about it. That's why we're so passionate about it, because, let's all just be better humans. And it's been so much easier. And that's why people do love their work more, because they feel comfortable with the people they're working with.
Yeah, Tricia, when we were talking before we hit record here, you gave me a great line, and it may be a tagline for your business, but it was around, you have to refresh my memory here a little bit, but people enjoying their work more. That was your mission. To give us that, because I think that's inspiring in of itself.
Yes, I think, and we don't really say about a tagline, but I'm going to come up with one. I mean, we really want an authentic collaboration to be a movement, because we do believe there's a better way to work. And we do believe people can enjoy their job and their work no matter what they're doing. And so we just want to create that energy and just get the information out there and give it to others. And that's all.
Edward, do you want to add to that? Because I made a note, and I'm going to throw something out there that you're going to want to embrace as your tagline and trademark it and really run with. So Edward, what would you say about, a one-liner that really encapsulates what this movement is about?
It's everything Tricia's described. Thanks for this question. It's collaborate to compete. And that is our approach, is if we decide to collaborate in new ways, based on the 5 core behaviors and the examples that Tricia described, collaboration is not only going to be the differentiator for how I experience the workplace in a new way and being on a team, because our team expanded very naturally because word spread, because there was something new that Tricia and I were doing day in and day out with these 5 core behaviors. So collaborate to compete is, sometimes we walk in and we think, oh, I have to compete with my colleague to get promotion. But you don't have to compete. Collaborate will set you apart as a leader. And that's really the differentiator.
And love your job again, right?
Yes.
So here's the note I wrote down during our earlier conversation. I think it was from Tricia. She said, you guys are all about changing how people enjoy their work. Did you say that, Tricia?
I did say that.
That's pretty powerful.
It is. Thank you. I feel so smart now.
I love that line, because if you get people excited about the work they're doing, the people with whom they're working, and give them a sense of, and there's a sense of purpose attached to that, look out, because good things are going to happen as a result of that.
Yes. And that described Tricia and my professional relationship. It was a joy to actually work together. It really was.
So shockingly, our time is coming to a close here. I want to have one final hopefully it's a fun interaction with you. I am calling you, and it can be either of you, on the phone. I am a brand newly elevated manager. I'm starting my first job. They're moving me in from the East Coast to lead this team. I'm fairly early in my career, and I somehow have listened to this podcast, and I want a little personal attention from you guys. And my question is, I start my new job on Monday. What's something I can do to, start well and get the ball rolling on this authentic collaboration stuff? What are one or two things I should be really attentive to early on? Tricia or Edward, give me some wisdom here.
So we didn't talk about this one thing, but as a leader, like, the most important thing is that you can hold the vision for everyone on your team or for the company if you're the CEO. So noble purpose is really important. So understand, like, as you're walking in there Monday morning, make sure that you know, like, what does your company do and what are you assigned to do, right? How does your project fit in with the purpose of the company? And then be able to know who's on your team and also help express how important that project is to the company, and not just to the company, but to the world. That if you don't make these diapers for and deliver them in 24 hours, there's going to be mothers out there who are stressed, who can't take care of their children. They're going to be children with like by diaper rash, right? Really put it as specifically as possible to help them see that they're just not a cog in the wheel, but they're the stone in the water that causes all the ripples throughout society. And so your team needs to see themselves as that. And then each person on the team needs to know how important they are to the project. So you give them their noble purpose too, that their unique skills and their contribution, the team can't live without. And, you know, when you do that for people and you have that in yourself, you're kind of fulfilling what we want as humans, right? That we have a purpose, that I'm using my unique talents for a good purpose, and that I'm growing doing it.
I love that. And in my terms, I often talk about mission first and then bring in the people always piece, because there's always that balance between people and performance that I think you addressed there, Tricia. Edward, final word. Give me that one piece of advice. I'm a new manager. I start my job on Monday. I'm coming to you, man. Give me some advice that will help me get off to that good start that I want to have. Make a good impression. Go.
I would ask two questions. When have you excelled as a leader? And how have you excelled as a leader? A new leader starting a new job, it's kind of black and white. Oh, I'm starting from scratch, new team, new or company, new. And I absolutely agree with Trish. What's the noble purpose for what you're trying to do? You got to be aware of that. But you're not starting from scratch. You have been successful as a leader because you got this job. Take a look at what it is. How have you excelled and shined? And then take a look at our 5 behaviors. Is it generosity, co-creation, preference for action, resourcefulness, gratitude? And decide how that's going to show up once you have your noble purpose clear and that on your team, as Trish says. Start with the authentic collaboration value and behavior that matches where you've excelled in the past. And you'll be able to breathe a little easier. So this isn't all straight from scratch. I can do this. And this is how I'm going to show this on this new role and team.
I think that's great advice from both of you. I can't wait until this book gets out into the world, so we have a little deeper dive in each of these behaviors. Until we get there, there's an opportunity to connect with Tricia and Edward through their website. That will be in the show notes, but it's authentic-collaboration.com, where they can talk to you about the speaking and coaching and workshops they do. They're also active on LinkedIn. And guys, I just want to thank you both so much for being great guests on the Mission First People Always podcast. I hope to have you back again sometime in the future.
Thank you so much,
you.
Dr. Mike.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. This was really fun. Really, really great time. Thanks.
Hey, this has been a great conversation. I often talk about how the primary role of a leader is to bring out the best in the people around them. And I think the 5 behaviors of authentic collaboration that Tricia and Edward talked about do just that. It really comes down to being a good human first and foremost, but they gave us a roadmap on how to do that in the context of the workplace. And if you're hearing this, you probably care deeply about improving teamwork, and that often begins with assessing the kind of teammate you are. To gauge that, begin by honestly answering the question, what's it like to be on the other end of me in teamwork situations? What kind of impact am I having on others? Am I truly inviting them to be their best? Am I someone they want to work with? And if you don't like the honest answers you gave yourself to those questions, you probably need to make some changes, and perhaps using those 5 behaviors would be a good guide. Gandhi famously said, "Be the change you want to see in the world." The same holds true for our teams. Model authentic collaboration and teamwork, be a good teammate, and see how it begins to affect those around you. Again, thanks for listening. If you like what you've heard today, subscribe, follow, leave a review, tell a friend. We want more people to be part of these conversations. You can learn more about what I do and connect with me at drmikepatterson.com. And always remember that people in performance.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to create a stronger, more people-centric and empowered culture for your organization, visit drmikepatterson.com.